This happened in 2019, and I still can't explain what I saw that night. I booked a cheap Airbnb for a weekend getaway, just a quiet place outside the city. The photos looked normal: 2 bedrooms, 1 bathroom, a small living room. Nothing unusual. The reviews were fine. A few people mentioned it felt isolated, but that was exactly what I wanted. When I arrived, the sun was going down. The house looked older in person, but still okay. I unlocked the door and stepped inside. The air smelled slightly damp, like old wood that hadn't been opened in a long time. I ignored it. Old houses smell sometimes. I dropped my bag and did a quick walk through. Living room, fine. Kitchen, fine. First bedroom, fine. Second bedroom, fine. Everything matched the listing. Almost everything. At the end of the hallway, past the bedrooms, there was another door. It wasn't in the photos. At first, I thought it was just a storage closet. Some owners keep cleaning supplies or personal items in a small room. That made sense. The door was painted the same color as the wall, blending in so well that you could almost miss it. But something about it made me stop. The latch. A heavy metal latch was on the outside of the door. Not the inside. The outside. Why would a door inside a rental house need to be locked from the outside? I told myself it was nothing. Old houses have strange designs. Maybe the owner kept private belongings inside. I didn't touch it. I went back to the living room and tried to relax. That night, I made dinner and watched something on my laptop. Everything felt normal. Until 3 a.m. I woke up to a soft sound. Tapping. Not loud. Not aggressive. Just a slow, rhythmic tapping, like someone lightly knocking on wood. I froze. I listened carefully. It was coming from the hallway. From behind that door. I held my breath. The tapping stopped. I waited. Nothing. Maybe it was my imagination. But I couldn't shake the feeling that someone, or something, was on the other side. I told myself it was nothing. Old houses make noises. Pipes creak. Wood expands. The tapping I heard at 3 a.m. was probably just the wind or my imagination. I turned over in bed and tried to sleep. But the sound came again. Tap, tap, tap. Slow. Deliberate. Like someone knocking from the other side of the wall. I sat up. My heart was already racing. The room was silent except for the faint sound of the house settling. No footsteps. No voices. Just that tapping. I grabbed my phone and turned on the flashlight. The hallway looked darker than before. It shouldn't have. Light from the living room usually reached halfway down, but now it seemed swallowed by shadows. I stepped out of bed. The air felt colder. I walked slowly toward the hallway, listening. The tapping stopped the moment I entered. Total silence. I shined the flashlight ahead. The hallway was empty. 2 bedroom doors. The bathroom. And at the end, the hidden door. The one I had ignored earlier. It looked different now. The latch. It was slightly open. I froze. I knew I hadn't touched it. I remembered clearly, when I first saw it, the latch was closed. Heavy. Locked. Now it hung loose. Just a small gap. Enough to move. My hand started shaking. I tried to convince myself there was a logical explanation. Maybe the owner had checked it. Maybe I had misremembered. But deep down, I knew I hadn't. I slowly approached the door. The floorboards creaked under my feet. The sound felt too loud in the silence. When I reached the door, I hesitated. My flashlight beam trembled. The gap in the door was just wide enough to see inside. Darkness. A small, empty room. No furniture. No windows. Just bare wooden walls. And something else. Scratch marks. Long, uneven lines running across the wood. Deep grooves, as if someone had dragged their nails down the surface. My stomach dropped. I took a step closer. The smell hit me. Stale air. Damp. Like something that hadn't been opened in years. I reached for the door. I shouldn't have. But I did. I reached for the door and the cold metal of the latch touched my fingers. It felt heavier than it should, like it had not been moved in years. I slowly slid it aside. The door creaked open just a little and a wave of stale air came out. The room was small, no windows, no furniture, just wooden walls and an empty floor, but the walls had deep scratches, long lines like someone tried to claw their way out. The sight made my stomach tighten. I stepped inside. The air was colder inside, like it had been sealed away. The smell of damp would hit me. I shined my flashlight across the walls. The scratches were everywhere, some near the floor, some higher, like hands had dragged down in desperation. In the corner there was a small pile of photographs. My hands shook before I touched them. The first photo was of the hallway, the same hallway outside the room, different angle but unmistakable. I recognized the door frame and the faint light from the living room. In the photo were two people standing there smiling. I did not recognize them. I flipped to the next photo. Different guests, same hallway. Another photo, another group, all strangers, all taken from behind them as if the camera had been inside the hidden room. My breath caught. I flipped the next photo. It was me standing in the hallway earlier that night looking at my phone. The timestamp said 8:47 p.m. I had arrived at 7:30. I was alone, or at least I thought I was. My hands trembled. I looked around the room again. The scratches on the walls seemed deeper, somehow like evidence of something trying to escape. My flashlight beam reached a small vent near the ceiling, barely noticeable, just big enough for a camera lens. My blood went cold. Someone could have been watching, recording, taking photos. I dropped the photos and backed toward the door. I did not close it. I ran. I stood frozen in the hidden room, my flashlight shaking in my hand. The scratches on the walls looked darker now, like old blood dried years ago. I touched one of the marks. It was rough, uneven, as if made by nails. The idea made my skin crawl. Someone had been trapped in here trying to escape. The photographs still lay on the floor. I picked one up again. It was the hallway, the same angle as before, but this time something was different in the background. A faint shadow stood at the end of the hallway. I zoomed in with my phone, but it was blurry, too blurry to recognize. My heart pounded. I felt like someone was watching me even though the room was empty. I turned quickly, scanning every corner. The vent near the ceiling seemed bigger somehow, the metal grill slightly bent as if it had been removed and put back in a hurry. I backed toward the door, my breath short. I needed to leave this place. Nothing about it felt right. I left the hidden room and slammed the door behind me. The sound echoed down the hallway. I locked it with the heavy latch, even though I knew it would not change anything. Something about that place felt wrong, like it existed outside normal rules. I grabbed my bag and moved toward the exit, my hands still shaking. The house was silent, too silent. No creaking floorboards, no distant sounds, just emptiness. I opened the front door and stepped outside. The cool night air hit my face, but it did not help the feeling of dread. I looked back at the house. The windows were dark, the hallway invisible from outside, but in my mind I pictured it, the scratches on the walls, the photographs, the small vent in the ceiling. Someone could have been watching all along. I tried to tell myself it was just an old house, strange noises and bad imagination, but the photos were real. I had them in my pocket. I pulled one out and stared at it again. The hallway, the shadow in the background, the angle like it had been taken from Inside the hidden room I flipped it over. There was no date, no explanation, just a small smudge of ink that looked like a fingerprint. My stomach dropped. I shoved the photo back into my pocket and walked to my car. Every step felt heavy. I kept glancing over my shoulder expecting to see someone standing at the door watching me, but there was nothing, just darkness. I started the car and drove away. I did not stop until I was far from that place. But even then the feeling followed me, the idea that someone or something had been in that room and maybe it was still there. I reported the listing the next day. The host never replied. The account disappeared. The property vanished from the site as if it had never existed, but I kept the photos. I still have them. Sometimes I look at them and try to convince myself there is a logical explanation. Old houses, strange angles, reflections, shadows, anything, but deep down I know what I saw and I cannot explain it, and sometimes late at night I still think about that hidden R.